Once upon a time, in a small village nestled amongst green fields and rolling hills, there lived a young boy named Ravi. Ravi lived with his family in a humble farm where they tended to their crops and animals and lived a simple and peaceful life. But life in the village was not always easy, as there was a cruel king who ruled over the land. The king would increase the taxes every year, making it harder for the villagers to make ends meet. The villagers struggled to keep up with the taxes, and many of them became poor and hungry. The king was notorious for his cruelty and would go to great lengths to enforce his rule. He had a vast army of soldiers who patrolled the land, and any villager who spoke out against him would be punished severely. Ravi watched as the king's actions slowly ruined the land, and he couldn't bear to see his family and friends suffer any longer. He knew he had to do something to help them, so he began to hatch a plan. Ravi spent weeks traveling from village to village, speaking with the people and gathering support for his cause. He told them of his plan to stand up against the king and to fight for their freedom and prosperity. At first, many of the villagers were hesitant to join Ravi's cause, as they feared the king's retribution. But Ravi was determined and passionate, and he slowly but surely won over the hearts and minds of the people. With the support of the villagers, Ravi began to train them in the art of warfare. He taught them how to fight with swords and spears, and how to move quickly and silently in the night. Ravi knew that the element of surprise would be crucial in their battle against the king. So, he decided to launch their attack at midnight when the king and his soldiers were sleeping. On the night of the attack, Ravi and his army of villagers crept silently towards the king's castle. They moved like shadows in the night, and before long they had reached the castle walls. Using ropes and ladders, Ravi and his men scaled the walls and entered the castle. They moved quickly and quietly, taking out the guards one by one. Soon they had reached the king's chambers, where they found him sleeping soundly. Ravi crept up to the king and stood over him, sword in hand. But as Ravi raised his sword to strike, the king awoke, and a fierce battle ensued. Ravi fought with all his might, but the king was a skilled warrior, and the battle was evenly matched. The battle raged on for what felt like hours, but finally Ravi was able to overpower the king and defeat him. With the king defeated, Ravi and his army of villagers were able to take control of the land. They abolished the unfair taxes and introduced fair and just laws for all. The villagers were finally able to live in peace and prosperity, and they looked to Ravi as their hero and savior. Ravi became the new leader of the land, and he ruled with fairness and kindness, ensuring that the people were always happy and content. Years went by, and Ravi grew old and wise. He watched as the village grew and prospered under his leadership, and he knew that he had done the right thing in standing up against the cruel king. And so, the legend of Ravi, the brave village boy who defeated the king, lived on for generations to come, inspiring future generations to always fight for what is right and just. As Ravi grew older, he knew that it was time for him to pass on his leadership to the next generation. He had trained many young people to take over after him, and he knew that they would continue to rule with fairness and kindness. One day, Ravi called a meeting of all the villagers and announced that he was stepping down as the leader of the land. The villagers were sad to see him go, but they knew that it was time for him to rest and enjoy his old age. As Ravi walked away from the meeting, he felt a sense of peace and contentment in his heart. He had done what he set out to do, and he had made a difference in the lives of the people he loved. Ravi spent the rest of his days living a peaceful life with his family. He watched as the village continued to grow and prosper, and he felt proud of all that he had accomplished. In the years that followed, the story of Ravi and his bravery was passed down from generation to generation. Children would gather around the fire at night and listen to the tale of the young village boy who stood up to the cruel king and fought for what was right.
And although Ravi was no longer with them, his legacy lived on, inspiring future generations to always fight for justice and freedom, no matter what the cost.